What if Hydreigon was in Gen 1 OU? Or as I used to call it most of my life from I think the anime, Hydreigon. I know that's not right because that's clearly an E, but that's just how I used to say most of my life. But for the sake of most of you, I will be calling it Hydreigon. And most of my life, it has been one of my all-time favorite Pokemon. Like for the majority of the time of me being a Pokemon fan, it's always been my fourth favorite, only behind Tyranitar, Garchomp, and Charizard. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about how good it would be in Gen 1 OU. And my god, this has been so requested. Like, I think this is by far the most requested Pokemon I've been getting for the past 2 weeks. It's just like actually insane. Maybe even longer. I'd have to check the comments. But I guess I can understand why you guys want it so much. It has a pretty good typing, hits pretty hard on both the physical and special side, and it has a pretty good speed stat. But also, it's just a pseudo legendary. They're just always super popular. And Hydreigon is definitely a victim of circumstance, because he started off with a good generation. Despite, fighting types being everywhere, Hydreigon still managed to, be a great Pokemon, even with so much competition from both Dark and Dragon types. But then Gen 6 came around, the type that I would say is extremely poor designed, whose name I will not mention in this video, just completely screwed Hydreigon over, and then, it didn't get much better for Gen 7. I forget what happened in Gen 8. It got nasty pod, right? I think it ended up getting a big buff in Gen 8. And then it was in OU for a little bit in Gen 9. But, as we all know, everything in OU is not safe in OU in Generation 9. You will fall to UU eventually. But how would it do in Gen 1? Because, on one hand, there's psychics everywhere. But at the same time, there's just as many blizzards, if not more blizzards. So, what do I think? Well, for starters, I've gone over some, other dragon types in this series before. Garchomp, Salamence, Dragapult, Excalibur. And Hydreigon might have the best defensive typing out of all of them. Not exactly, because, both Dragapult and Excalibur, those along with Hydreigon, all have very valuable immunities. Dragapult is immune to normal. Excalibur is immune to freeze. And Hydreigon is immune to psychic. And while Hydreigon's immunity is the least good out of all of them, it also, just in general, just has, I would just say better, defensively. At least when it comes to using its dragon typing. Because for Excalibur, while it has the best offensive typing, because there's not really any dragon moves in the game, and since, being immune to freeze is huge, but at the same time, its dragon typing means you don't actually resist ice, and its ice typing means you don't resist, fire either. Meanwhile, Dragapult, technically Ghost doesn't overlap, so it basically has the exact same, weaknesses and immunities, or not weaknesses, resistances, as Hydreigon. Because Dragapult is relatively frail, it can't take as much advantage with those resistances. Hydreigon, on the other hand, it has pretty good defenses all around, with 90 in both of them and then a 92 HP. Meaning that its resistances to, fire, grass, electric, and water are all really relevant. In fact, more relevant for Hydreigon than Dragapult. Because while normal immunity, that's good. But being a dark dragon means that for Pokemon like Starmie, you only have one move exactly that's good against you. What does Starmie usually use? Surf, Psychic, Thunderbolt, Blizzard? Yeah, only one of those Hydreigon really cares about. And that one has only 8 power points. When you have Chansey and Ice types everywhere in Gen 1. It's insane. Same would go for Executor, where it has, Psychic. But then outside of Psychic, it only either uses Double Edge as its main attacking move, or you go for Mega Drain, which Hydreigon also resists. And even if, like, Executor had Razor Leaf, Hydreigon wouldn't care about that either. So overall, just a really good defensive typing. And I would say the first Pokemon I've gone over in this series, where it really truly does take full use of the Dragon typing. And it's not actually a hindrance. Because the only thing it has to worry about is, a Blizzard. Which, you can, just with a good enough team that's just really resistant towards ice, you don't care about. There's also, like, Chansey's Ice Beam, I guess. But, or actually, that is legitimate fall. But, not the worst thing in the world, since you can still hit Chansey for decent chip damage with your 105 base physical attack. So, it could be worse. So, if he has a good defensive typing, how good are his offenses? Like I just, sort of hinted to. His attack, it's pretty good. But also, like, at least for, like, Chansey, doesn't hit as hard as you want it to. Because I think, like, Earthquake is a 3-hit KO, which means that Chansey can just paralyze you, which makes it a lot more annoying. And since Chansey actually has a super effective, ice move with a lot of power points, it'll probably win, especially since it has healing, and Hydreigon doesn't get Roost in Gen 1. Mostly because, Roost isn't a move, but even if it did have it, I probably wouldn't give it to him. And one thing I probably should mention now is that a lot of people have tried talking about Fire Spin Hydreigon. Because in Generation 8, that was another move it got, Fire Spin. However, normally for these videos, I prefer to only use the original moveset from their debut generation. But I can see where you guys wanted that, but also, I would say Hydreigon doesn't really need it. Like, he does have issues, but I don't think Fire Spin really stops any of them. It's not like, Fire types where it's just good for pivoting. Which, yes, that's Hydreigon, it would be nice. But also, Hydreigon already has a really, limited move pool. And other than pivoting, it doesn't really solve any of his issues. Especially since, for every single Pokemon that does threaten Hydreigon, with the exception of Slowbro, Hydreigon does have tools to threaten them. So it's not like Skeleturge or Volcarona, where it's terrified of Rhydon or Slowbro and needs to get out immediately. Hydreigon has options, and it can hold its own. So, yeah, sorry if you wanted Fire Spin, but you're not getting it. Also, I'll briefly mention that it's 98 speed. I would argue it's probably perfect for it, because it means you just barely outspeed Jinx, which is by far the most important thing for you to outspeed, because it means that you can threaten it with Rock Slide and Fire Blast, and while it's not an OHKO, with the crit, it could be, and since you have a slightly better crit rate than Jinx, Jinx probably just doesn't risk it, but at the same time, you probably don't risk it either. So it's a massive, could go either way, but it's more so in your, or it's not really in your favor, but it could lead to some really interesting mind games. And finally, the special, it's good, but you have a really limited special move pool in Gen 1, which is just really unfortunate. But speaking of, what do you have? You have Body Slam, which is ultimately not useful, which for reasons I'll go into later. Earthquake and Fire Blast. These are probably your main attacking moves for your physical and special side. Earthquake, just consistent damage, also allows you to hit Gengar super effectively. And Fire Blast, it's just your most powerful move in general, because it's your most powerful, special move. And it's not useless. I would say it's pretty good, and you would probably use it, even if you had, another move you can probably use instead. At the very least, you'd probably use it over, Dragon Stab if you can use it. Because, it's mostly being able just to threaten a burn on Tauros and Snorlax is incredibly useful. Not to mention, I guess you don't really need it for Rhydon, because you have Surf. But either way, though, I think it would be good. Well, granted, some versions of Snorlax have, Rest. Even then, it's still, by far your most powerful move against Snorlax. So, I just can't see any reason for you to use anything else. I'll go over it more later, when I actually go over the Snorlax and Tauros matchups. I didn't actually know that Hydreigon could learn Head Smash, but It's definitely interesting. You can't use it in Gen 1, but I'm curious if anyone has tried using it before for like other gens. Reflect is interesting, but ultimately I just don't think it solves the problems that Hydreigon has. Because even with like Tauros and Snorlax, it can take Body Slam pretty well, but the issue is that you don't kill either one of them enough. Or Tauros doesn't matter at all because he has Blizzard, but for Snorlax, even if you use like Fire Blast or just any other powerful move, Snorlax will still take a lot of hits, which means that it'll probably paralyze you anyways. So ultimately, like, Reflect does nothing for it. And Rest is interesting, especially since I tried saying that it does have a really good defensive typing. It can definitely survive a few turns, so it's definitely worth considering. Same thing with Rock Slide. Normally, I'm not a big fan of Rock Slide in Gen 1. I would usually argue it's only really good for, like, Rhydon exactly. But I do think Hydreigon could make good use of it. Because it is weak to both the ice types, so if you want a more consistent move rather than Fire Blast. But also, it's Hydreigon's best option for going against Zapdos. Because against Zapdos, other than like Rock Slide or like the weak Body Slam, you only really have Fire Blast, which you don't really want to waste a lot of power points for. And I'm also pretty sure that Zapdos can just kill you first with just Drill Peck, unless you get a burn. So Rock Slide can be good, both for getting decent chip on, Cloyster or like Lapras, doing good damage to Jinx, or being good damage with against Zapdos. I do believe that, Rock Slide is the main move you would use if you want to beat Zapdos 1v1. Also good for the occasional, like, Zapdos, or not Zapdos, Articuno or Moltres. I don't know how often you would see them, but if you can somehow, like, be a god and predict they're going to switch into their Articuno, going for Rock Slide, getting a lot of damage in, could do a lot of damage. Or actually, I know Zapdos is base 100 speed, but is Articuno base 90? If it is, then just all the more reason just to use Rock Slide. It's just really good. Surf is literally its only other, like, special move. So, like, now you can probably understand just how shallow his special move pool is, where he only has Surf and Fire Blast. And Surf is good, both for just one-shotting Rhydon, to the point where if Rhydon's out, instead of Hydreigon, I don't even think you risk it not having Surf. You just have to switch out until you know. But even then, like, if you ignore that, I would say that considering it's, has a lot of power points and it's way more accurate than, Fire Blast, it's also, like, worth considering. Not that, like, Water Stab is, like, very good offensively in Gen 1. It's okay. You definitely see it a lot. But, like, it's never, like, a big threat. So I would say it's worth considering. Like, at the very least, probably more than Hyper Beam, as it's just nice, you can spam it more, and there's just less downsides to it. And outside of Fire Blast, this is probably the main move you will always use, that being Thunder Wave. Because, like I said, Hydreigon's pretty fast. It can take at least a hit or two, worst case scenario. So being able to paralyze something like, let's say, Cloyster or Tauros, even a worst case scenario, your Hydreigon's still contributing a lot. It will probably get some decent damage in too. And overall, like, it's just probably one of the better T-Wave setters. Not better than Starmie or Chansey, but still good. Like, it's still like a really big threat. And it obviously has Hyper Beam. And also just look at some of these other moves that it could learn, like Charge Beam and Thunder Fang. It really wishes it can use these. Hell, even like Work Up. Like, if Work Up... Would it use Work Up? Considering it raises both stats, it probably would. And that would be interesting. If it can boost its special and a physical attack and go for, like, Fire Blast, Earthquake, Hyper Beam. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. Speaking of interesting, is Screech in Gen 1? I feel like it is, but I don't remember exactly. I feel like... Same way how, like, there are some crazy people who will use Leer on, Rhydon. I feel like some crazy people might go for Screech. Because it is just a good way of just, lowering some defense so that your physical moves just are way more threatening. I wouldn't say it's good, but if your opponent doesn't see it coming, it might allow you to just KO their Chansey or something else. I don't know, like, if you're crazy enough, go for it. And I do plan on having Hydreigon in the Generation Jumble, so that'll be your chance. By the way, considering so many of you have been requesting Hydreigon recently, Hydreigon is now part of just the main 3 that I think are going to be auto-included. And for those of you who don't know, or just don't remember, the Generation Jumble will be a series of tournaments or seasons being hosted in my Discord server. It will be based off my videos, so it'll just be Gen 1 custom games, but we'll be adding certain Pokemon to spice it up and to see if they can either take over Generation 1 or just, be outshadowed by the Pokemon that are already there. And the 3 Pokemon that are already guaranteed are Great Tusk, because it started this channel in the first place with my What If Great Tusk Was an OU vid. Terrakion, because just like Hydreigon, it was a Pokemon requested for a really long time, and I took forever to get around to it. And Hydreigon, for, here for obvious reasons. I'll probably include a Steel type too, just to automatically have. I'm debating on it either being Aggron or Skarmory. Aggron because it's the second ever video I did, and Skarmory because I just feel like it would just be interesting for defensive teams, and I feel like, well, Skarmory kind of deserves a break after what happened in Generation 8 and 9. But we can talk about that later. Like, just be sure to go in the description and vote for Pokemon you like to have in the Generation Jumble. AJ, he made a Google Doc where you can just vote for 10 Pokemon you'd like to see in the Generation Jumble. Just make sure it's Pokemon that I've actually covered before. And, I think that's pretty much it. Let's just get on to the replays, shall we? Always starting off with the boy himself, Tauros. And this is a weird predicament, because if you get a burn off Fire Blast, it's really, really good. But at the same time, it's probably better just to go for Thunder Wave. But even then, like, Fire Blast does pretty good damage. Like, 3-hit KOs Tauros, almost 2-hit KOs. So even if you just paralyze Tauros and then just, like, get, like, almost half health then, like, that's still amazing. And you're still probably, like, I would still say Hydreigon that would be a huge contribution, even if Hydreigon doesn't do anything else. But it probably can. Like, it just completely walls, or counters like Alakazam and other psychic types. And for Snorlax, if there's one word I can use to describe this matchup for both of them, it is annoying. Like, Fire Blast does, like, almost 30, so not bad. But like I said, it gives Snorlax a lot of time to go for, Body Slam and Paralysis. Granted, while true Snorlax can heal off the damage, Hydreigon can also just hit hard, both physically and specially. So, giving Hydreigon free turns to go for, any move it wants, means that Snorlax can't just, it probably doesn't, have the longevity. Hydreigon can whittle it down. But also with Paralysis Look, Snorlax can win too. And this is only against just a pure physical attacking Snorlax set. There's also, Reflectalax. That one can be hit and miss. It just depends on what moves you're using on Snorlax. If it's still using physical moves, you can still just wear it down with Surf and Fire Blast. But if it's like Amnesialax, you're just dead. There's just, nothing Hydreigon can do. It can just not damage Snorlax fast enough, which means Snorlax can just go for Ice Beam, and then you are just murdered. So overall, I guess it's still it could go either way, just because, Snorlax movesets are so versatile. But it's almost leaning towards bad, if I'm being completely honest here. And speaking of bad, oh boy, I did not think the Chansey matchup would be, this bad. Earthquake only does 30%. So, Ice Beam is still a 3-hit KO. Chansey can paralyze you, can heal you. So, you kind of need a crit of Hyper Beam, exactly, if you want to just, KO it super quickly. Which, you're not even guaranteed to use Hyper Beam in the first place. So there's just nothing really Hydreigon can do. And even with Hyper Beam, even with a crit, it's still a damage range. So, just tough luck. I skipped the Alakazam replay, so now we have Oyster. And just really unfortunate that Fire Blast is not a 2-hit KO. It almost is, but ever so slightly, you just miss out on that damage. It's still good that Hydreigon's faster, and if you get a crit, you can still win the 1v1. And even in a worst case scenario like the replay here, you can do damage, and then you can paralyze it, and the Cloyster can't really do much after that, assuming it doesn't have rest. But it's I would probably say it's still a bad matchup. Now here's, like, the call it a great matchup is a big understatement. Hydreigon does not care about sweep, at least from Executor at all. And like I said, the only moves Executor could use on Hydreigon are either Double Edge, like you're seeing here, you can see how well it's going, or Mega Drain, which Mega Drain would just be a garbage move. Now keep in mind that, this Executor in the replay here is burned, so, like, it would be doing a little bit more damage. But even then, it's still going to take a lot of Double Edges to actually kill Hydreigon. So just have Dragon, just sitting there, having free turns to, fight off sleep. And then, like, just taking recoil from Double Edge. Really not worth it. Hydreigon has no fear of Executor at all. And, same thing goes for Gengar, honestly. It's just like with Starmie. It has, like, no moves to really hurt Hydreigon other than one. But unlike Starmie, it's not even super effective. You have Thunderbolt and Mega Drain, which Hydreigon resists, Psychic, which Hydreigon's immune to, and then Nightshade, which is always a 4-hit KO. So you don't risk, like, Hypnosis on Hydreigon. Because, like, what do you even do? You give Hydreigon, like, a few turns to wake up after that. An Earthquake does a lot of damage, and a crit kills you. So just, it's not worth it. Like, Gengar fears Hydreigon, and rightfully so. And then Jolteon, funny enough, Double Kick is relevant. Or at the very least, relevant to go over. It's still not good. It does nothing. You would need a crit just to 2-hit KO it. If that, I would not be surprised if Double Kick is a 3-hit KO. So while you can paralyze a Hydreigon, Hydreigon just takes the matchup very easily. So Jolteon just can't catch a break. And then with Jinx, Rock Slide does a little bit less than Fire Blast. And for the most part, like, Jinx would probably just go for a Lovely Kiss. Just because it doesn't really want to risk, not killing it with a crit. It could go either way, but probably more so on Jinx's favor. But Hydreigon can also just, if it gets a crit, either with Rock Slide or Fire Blast, Jinx is dead. So I'm not even sure if Jinx really risks it. It's hard to say. And then Rhydon, Surf just murders. Like, I don't know what else you would want me to say. Like, I guess, like, if you don't have Surf, and you have, like, Earthquake, maybe then Rhydon does a lot better. But even then, like, I'm not even sure Rhydon risks that. I really don't know. If you're a Rhydon player, just always assume that they have Surf, because, like, it's a good move either way. And as for Slowbro, they probably the only true unwinnable matchup. Even with the worst of the worst that Hydreigon has to deal with, such as Cloyster, Starmie, or Jinx, it still has moves that can do a lot of damage to them. It's not the case with Slowbro. The only two special moves Hydreigon has are, Surf and Fire Blast, which even without any special drops or boosts, Slowbro doesn't care about. And then you just have physical moves, which Slowbro also doesn't care about. So Hydreigon just has no way of harming Slowbro whatsoever. Ironic, I know. And then Starmie, like I said, it only has one move that can, damage Hydreigon. And even then, it's not even 100% accurate. At the same time, Hydreigon, it doesn't do enough damage. Starmie can very easily heal. Even like a critical, like, Earthquake and Hyper Beam, as you see there, wasn't actually enough. So, it's, I don't know if this could go either way. It's probably just a bad matchup, if I'm being honest. But it's also one that you can very easily work around, just with having good teammates that you can switch in to soak up the blizzards. And also just the fact that most of Starmie's moveset is useless against Hydreigon, in of itself is I would consider a good thing. If you're using a Starmie set that doesn't have Blizzard for whatever reason, and sets like that do exist, like Hydreigon just hard counters. And then for Zapdos, last but not least, like I said, Rock Slide does pretty good damage. And if you don't have Rock Slide, Zapdos can 4-hit KO you with Drill Peck, as you can see. Which means that you kind of need to get a Fire Blast burn in order to take it out, if that even happens. So, Rock Slide I still think is worth considering. A good chance it might be worth considering over Surf, in all honesty. And here is the tier list. And honestly, I thought Hydreigon was going to do worse. I honestly thought the Hydreigon was just going to be mid, or maybe not mid. Okay, I thought he'd be like, okay. He walls Alakazam. He can do some damage, but a lot like Salamence, where Salamence didn't have any stab moves, so Salamence would just hit hard, but also just not hard enough, and then get killed. But Hydreigon's typing really does save it, and helps it differentiate from Salamence a lot more. Being able to just wall so many different common attacking types, and completely be immune to Psychic, is way more valuable than Salamence being immune to Earthquake. So I'm impressed. This probably goes in bad matchups. And Jinx, both Jinx and Snorlax you could put in bad matchups, but I think putting them in could go either way is fair enough. It just depends on your personal preference, which I want you to let me know in the comments, how you think Hydreigon would do. Do you think he would be OU? Do you think a Blizzard weakness will hold him back? Would he be borderline? And how good would he actually be in OU? I definitely think he would be better than Jolteon, and probably Slowbro, but I can also not be surprised if he isn't. I don't really know where he would be ranked. I think he'd still be on the lower side though. Not one of the high mons, or probably not even B rank. Wouldn't be surprised if he was C rank, but I want you guys to let me know what you think. Thank you all for watching. This is Groundback, and until next time, I look forward to hearing from you.